Thank you, money, for being in my life. Thank you, money, for loving me. Thank you, money, for choosing me. Thank you, money, for flowing to me easily. Thank you, money, for flowing to me freely. Thank you, money, for flowing to me constantly. Thank you, money, for abundance. Thank you, money, for prosperity. Thank you, money, for wealth. Thank you, money, for financial freedom. Thank you, money, for food on my plate. Thank you, money, for a safe home. Thank you, money, for comfort and security. Thank you, money, for peace of mind. Thank you, money, for good health. Thank you, money, for healing. Thank you, money, for medical support. Thank you, money, for allergy. Thank you, money, for strength. Thank you, money, for protection. Thank you, money, for my parents. Thank you, money, for my children. Thank you, money, for my family. Thank you, money, for love. Thank you, money, for happiness. Thank you, money, for smiles. Thank you, money, for laughter. Thank you, money, for joy. Thank you, money, for balance. Thank you, money, for commerce. Thank you, money, for work. Thank you, money, for opportunities. Thank you, money, for success. Thank you, money, for growth. Thank you, money, for progress. Thank you, money, for skills. Thank you, money, for talent. Thank you, money, for confidence. Thank you, money, for self-worth. Thank you, money, for courage. Thank you, money, for learning. Thank you, money, for education. Thank you, money, for books. Thank you, money, for wisdom. Thank you, money, for priority. Thank you, money, for focus. Thank you, money, for creativity. Thank you, money, for inspiration. Thank you, money, for ideas. Thank you, money, for a better vision. Thank you, money, for giving power. Thank you, money, for receiving power. Thank you, money, for generosity. Thank you, money, for kindness. Thank you, money, for service. Thank you, money, for helping others. Thank you, money, for contribution. Thank you, money, for purpose. Thank you, money, for meaning. Thank you, money, for fulfillment. Thank you, money, for luxury. Thank you, money, for travel. Thank you, money, for freedom of choice. Thank you, money, for ease. Thank you, money, for simplicity. Thank you, money, for relaxation. Thank you, money, for rest. Thank you, money, for good sleep. Thank you, money, for harmony. Thank you, money, for respect. Thank you, money, for dignity. Thank you, money, for stability. Thank you, money, for savings. Thank you, money, for investments. Thank you, money, for expense. money, for business growth. Thank you, money, for career growth. Thank you, money, for recognition. Thank you, money, for rewards. Thank you, money, for miracles. Thank you, money, for miracles. Thank you, money, for blessings. Thank you, money, for divine support. Thank you, money, for universal flow. Thank you, money, for perfect timing. Thank you, money, for alignment. Thank you, money, for ease and grace. Thank you, money, for trust. Thank you, money, for faith. Thank you, money, for abundance mindset. Thank you, money, for positive beliefs. Thank you, money, for releasing fear. Thank you, money, for releasing lack. Thank you, money, for replacing scarcity. Thank you, money, for replacing worry. Thank you, money, for peace. Thank you, money, for gratitude. Thank you, money, for love. Thank you, money, for joy. Thank you, money, for today. Thank you, money, for now. Thank you, money, for always. Thank you, money, for everywhere. Thank you, money, for rhyming. Thank you, money, for burlesque. Thank you, money, for abundance. Thank you, money. I am truly grateful.